I'm excited to welcome on to the third episode of What Coaches Think. I have Coach Smiley here and obviously Coach Sather. Let's just kind of start this thing off, though. Talk about how all you guys have got to the point you're at. Coach Smiley, we're going to start with you.
Well, it's funny. Part of the reason where I got to where I was at is because of Coach Sather. Coach Sather, way back when I was in high school, going into my junior or senior year, whatever it was, he actually saw me. This is how small the circle is. He saw me. He saw Sundance at a team camp at the University of Wyoming. And he was an assistant at Northern State at the time. And he started recruiting us from there. And, if I didn't know these guys, Coach Sather recruited me at the time. And then I played my first actual assistant job was Coach Sather's assistant at Black Hills State University. At the time, it was too, and it was right after I finished my master's program down in Texas, and he took a chance on about a 23-year-old kid to be his assistant. So it only paid $7,000 at the time too, so the market was limited. But that's kind of how I started off my career and moved on through different stages to where I'm at now.
And about you, Coach Wicks? I mean, you're obviously at Pacific now. You've been there for a few years now. Take us through how you got you there.
Well, you kind of find a common theme amongst all of us. There's a few degrees of separation, but obviously Coach Sather recruited me to Northern State as well. And how he sold me is he printed off a news clipping from our local newspaper and put a tattoo on my arm that said NSU with a heart around it. And he wrote a note that said, "Hey, great watching you, da-da-da-da-da. P.S. Is that a tattoo on your arm?" And that sold me. It sold me. I hope he's not using those recruiting tactics anymore. I think he's elevated the game a little bit, but it was an easy sell. But, I played with Coach Smiley for 1 year. He was a senior when I was a freshman. And then my first coaching job was actually as an assistant at Sheridan Junior College. Under Coach Smiley when he got the head job out there, and I'll let him tell that recruitment story because we still to this day say it was the best recruit he got there. But it was tough sledding to convince me because it's I was a recent college graduate, and it's tough to tell a guy you're going to take about $5,000, you're going to live with a 1-year-old, and you're going to live on campus. So after Sheridan, I moved on to the University of San Francisco, and then I've been out here at the University of Pacific for the last 4 years.
And Coach Sather, I mean, obviously a lot of these guys have somehow affiliated with you in the past. Take us through what it's been like now to become North Dakota head coach.
Well, it's interesting. I think what these guys end up talking about a lot is just the relationships and the people around that just have a great impact on you. And I mean, it's the having players like that as a coach that kind of helps you be successful. I was visiting with a recruit today, and you're kind of going through your own personal bio, and you basically got to give credit to everybody that you work with, and whether it's players, whether it's coaches. I think that's the thing you always got to remember is if you're having success as a head coach, it has a direct, relationship to what your family, to your recruits, to your coaches, and all those things. But I was really lucky on this. Way back, I was first year out of college. I was coaching and teaching at Sidney High School out in Nebraska. And I met up with Greg McDermott, and his assistant at the time was Mike Finger. And I met them at a clinic, and I ended up hanging out with them and spending some time with them. He was at Wayne State College at the time, and they were moving to the Northern Sun. And so they were kind of picking my brain a little bit on what the Northern Sun was like and as a conference. And it was about a few months later, I got a phone call from Mac about being a graduate assistant. And so that was kind of, when your opportunities come, you got to make a decision. These guys talked about the money. You had to kind of find a way to go back to grad school and basically make nothing. But it was so worth it. I met my wife at Wayne State College, so there Kelsey got a plug on the podcast. But Coach Mack was what got me into college coaching, and then I got hired by Bob Olson. Coach Olson was the head coach when I was the assistant when we recruited Sonny and Steve, and he stepped down to take the AD job when Coach Meyer came in, and so then I was able to stay on staff. And those guys continued to still come to Northern, and that's kind of how it all started with those guys and Coach Meyer. So, I mean, we've all been pretty fortunate to spend the years we did with Coach Meyer. Awesome guy, incredible coach. But what I've always enjoyed about him was just how, I always told people, like, I miss his laugh. Like, he just had such a great infectious laugh. He had a great time outside of coaching as well. And so, like, it's just and the guys that played for him or worked with him, that relationship just stays. It just you're connected, and I think that's very evident with these guys here and the guys after them as well.
And Coach Sundance, I mean, you're a guy that we've known each other for a long time now. You've been in the college world, you've been in the AAU world. Take us through the journey now to being at Wyoming.
Well, all these stories are funny. I wish Coach Sather would have recruited me with tattoo stories, and would have sent me some ink photos back in the day. But really, I have to give Coach Sather a lot of credit. He kept his mouth shut when Bob Olson came into our house and illegally offered my dad 7 pheasants so I would sign with Northern State. And back then, that was a high level of cheating. If you wanted to have a gray area, you just offered pheasant hunting or pheasants, for players. And so I was sold for 7 pheasants to Northern State University. So unlike my brother's story, who was sold on tattoos, I was sold on pheasants. Yeah. But it's funny how this whole thing circles. And as we're sitting here talking about this, I've probably been on a little different end of coaching than the coaches that are on here, because I have been in this profession and I have been fired from jobs and had to, start a new kind of a basketball sabbatical in Arizona with you guys, with Zach and Landon and the family, and starting Arizona Power, but then was afforded an opportunity. And the irony of the situation was when I was a GA, I got to coach my brother for 1 year. Mm-hmm. All right. And then I moved on and was coaching at the University of Colorado and went to Northern Illinois and were let go, then went to Arizona. And it was my brother who basically helped me get back into college coaching. And it's funny how this world works. A lot of people say there's a lot of degrees of separation between the people that you're with, but when your own family member is having a high level of success and your younger brother can recommend you and co-sign for you to get a job with him, which was a dream. I mean, it was a dream to be able to coach with my brother at San Francisco. I wouldn't be where I am today without Luke, but I also wouldn't be where I am today without Coach Sather and without my, best friend and roommate for 4 years, Steve. And after, we were let go at San Francisco, it was Coach Sather who called me, and you want to talk about money and all this stuff. I mean, it just doesn't matter. When you get a great opportunity, you got to go, no matter what the price is. And working with Coach Sather was probably in the last 4 years the biggest blessing in my life, because I met my wife working back in Aberdeen with Coach Sather. We got to coach in a national championship, and that spurred me on to be able to have my first head coaching opportunity, and then to be in a situation I am now where it comes full circle, where Coach Smiley and myself were recruited at by Coach Sather at University of Wyoming back in the home state. So this journey will take you on a lot of different ups and downs. And Coach Linder said it today. He goes, it's the ones who can just grind it out and fight it out on the daily basis that survive in this business. And it's not about salary. It's not about any of that crap, but it's about having a foxhole worth of friends that are sitting here right now and being able to tell these stories.
Absolutely. And the one thing that really unites all you guys is obviously Coach Meyer. And I just want each one of you guys now to kind of share the one memory that you kind of stand out the most to, your favorite memory with him. We'll start off with you, Coach Smiley.
It's a good question.
Hey, man, it's hard to pick one.
Well, it is hard to pick one. I would say, for what everyone thinks of Coach Meyer and, the clinics and the DVDs and all the different stuff that people know from the outside, and that he was a really tough coach to play for. I mean, he was as hard to play for as really anybody. But what people didn't get to see is the other side of him. I remember, for me, probably the most profound moment with me and Coach Meyer is it's probably going into my – Sonny would know. So probably like my junior year, maybe senior year, one of those 2 years. And no, it was even earlier than that. It was probably going into my sophomore year. And one of my best friends from back home had just committed suicide, just hung himself. And we had found out about that, and I had to get back home for the funeral and stuff. And I remember, I believe it was before I left, Coach had me come out to the house and just spend some time. And it was a moment in our relationship that I'd never seen that side of him, because, again, on the court, he's so tough. And he's not touchy-feely guy with his players. He'll never tell you he loves you until you're done playing for him, unless you were Sonny. You know, he tells Sonny, but everyone else. But just, you know, I was able to see that side of him, and it kind of segues me into another story when I finished playing for him, and we were driving around town, and we were in his car, and he had all these stories about he'd like to stop and pick up aluminum cans and crap like that. But you're in his car, and he just stopped the car, and he looked over at Steve, man, just so you know, like, I love you, man. And he had never told me that, and I'd been with him for 5 years. And so being able to have that kind of culmination in my career with him, and then I got the chance to work with him as an assistant coach 2 years down the road. And so I saw a totally different side of coach working with him on the coaching side. But as a player, that was probably kind of the most profound thing, because they said he's not an easy coach to play for, but if you love it, you'll love it. If you didn't love basketball, you'd never make it.
Absolutely. And Coach Luke, I mean, what's your favorite story with him?
My perspective is probably a little bit different, because I think all three of these guys got to see a different side of him when they worked for him and with him. I never got that opportunity per se. I was there for 5 years, so I did redshirt 1 year and got to see a little bit different aspect of the game and kind of understand. I played my true freshman year, and that was tough because, you know, obviously I think everyone has a little bit of program shock and culture shock, and you got to get acclimated to the college game no matter what level you play at. And we had some pretty darn good players. And, you know, I remember my first summer up there, I was sitting in the hallway. I think Sundance was a GA that time too, and we just got done with an open gym, and I walked home. I said, I don't know if I'm going to make it here because I'm not very good. And, you know, throughout that year, you get challenged, and coach wasn't gonna baby you. He wasn't gonna, you know, make you feel good about anything. He was gonna make you do it until you could do it and prove that you could do it consistently. So, I think as you progressed, you know, your freshman and your sophomore years, he really challenged you. And then as the time you were a junior and senior, you kind of had some equity built up, and you had a little bit more of a leash, and he knew. You obviously knew what to expect from him, and at the same point, he knew what to expect from you day in and day out. So I think it gets a little bit easier, and maybe it doesn't for those two guys, but as a junior and senior, I felt he still challenged you and still pushed you. But there were times where, you know, I could say, Coach, we're just not going to do that. And maybe that's just me being me. And he would be like, okay, if you don't want to do it, don't do it then. But everyone else is doing it. You know, and we would go back and forth, and, you know, we challenge each other. And, you know, it was great because you could still have that dialogue with him. A lot of people might say, no, you know, he was his way or the highway, but I don't think that was the case. I think there were some stern things that he held firm to, and he wasn't going to waver in his convictions because he'd been doing it for so long. But at the same point, if you brought something to him and said, hey, this is how we feel, or this is how we can get this done, he would give you input. You know, along the lines of after playing, he would try and give me advice, and me being as bullheaded as I was like, you know, Coach, I don't know about that. But I do remember vividly when he came out after his car wreck, and he, you know, lost his lower leg, and he had stopped coaching at that time. I believe it was maybe 2013. He came out to the University of San Francisco, and we had flew him out, and you know, Kyle Schwan, who actually played with me and played at Northern with us, was an assistant at Santa Clara at the time. And our athletic departments split the cost to have him fly out and speak to our athletic departments, and then spend a day with any team that truly wanted to meet with him. And just getting to spend the time, that was the first time. So that was 6 years probably after I was done playing, was the first time I actually got to have a conversation, a heartfelt conversation, and truly know how he felt about coaching me, and the impact that he thought that I brought to the program and the team, and where he saw me and how proud he was of me in that sense. So anytime you can have a mentor and a guy that you look up to almost as a father figure give you that appreciation and show you some affection and some love, it means a lot. And we sat in the dugout of the basement. He loved baseball. He was a big-time baseball guy. And, you know, these guys can all attest. He goes, you got to cut it. You got to cut it a little bit. And we go through that, we'd be like, what are you even talking about, Coach? None of us play baseball. We don't know what that means. But we were sitting in the baseball dugout after he'd spoke to the baseball team. And we sat there for probably 3 hours and just talked about life and talked about goals and everything. And the baseball coaches there had got a couple photos of it, and those are some of the things. So I got a picture in my office of it. With one of the most influential things he said, and he didn't think of it, but I mean, I'll give him credit because he was the one that brought it to my world, was, you know, it's find your gift, develop your gift, and give your gift away. You know, and you can say that gift or passion. And that was one of the things that if you got a passion for it, man, live it out no matter what it is. And I never thought I wanted to coach. And he steered me in that direction because he saw something in me. And to this day, he's kind of the guy that pushed me in this direction. And it's one of the biggest things that stands out in my mind is just how compassionate and caring he was for everyone that came into his life.
And Coach Sather, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, what's amazing when you look at it is how many guys that played for him coached or are coaching or are leaders. I mean, that's what's amazing to me. It was, you know, for the players that were played for Coach Olson and then moved to Coach Meyer, there was a lot of program shock. That went the same with the assistant staff. I had a lot of program shock that first year. You know, you just, you know, sometimes you're great at giving incredible advice. And Coach Meyer sometimes was a great victim to what his passion was, because like for his family, for his kids, like he would tell us to have balance in life, and he had none. And I think these guys would all agree with that. I think his wife and kids would agree with that. I think his first accident was the quintuple bypass surgery. I think that really changed him. And I think you guys were around for that and saw that. And then that accident obviously really put a different perspective with him. But man, his passion for getting guys, helping people become the best they could be. And it was basketball that he coached, obviously, but it could have been anything. It could have been baseball. It could have been anything that he coached. That's what he really got a kick out of. So like the passion that he had for his players during and then after, man, that he truly did just love all those guys that made it through the program, as he would say, the program. And so that's what always, you know, I remember. There's so many funny stories. Like if you work with him, I remember one of the first road trips. We're playing in Duluth, and he's got khakis and a flannel shirt on for the Bemidji game. We get to Duluth. We get to a hotel. We check in. We're splitting a room, him and I, and he rolls to bed in his khakis and flannel shirt that he wore to the Bemidji State game. And then we get up and we have a shoot-around. We get up and have a shoot-around the next morning before our Duluth game, and he's wearing those khakis and the same shirt he wore. He rolled right out of bed and just went to shoot-around. And that's kind of how he lived his life. He was kind of oblivious to, like, a lot of social norms, totally oblivious. Boogers hanging on his shirts. And, you know, I mean, just eating with his mouth wide open, and just there's a lot of things about him. You go, what in the world is this guy about? But man, when he put a whistle on, there wasn't many guys that I've ever been around better. He just would not let things fall through the cracks. If you didn't do it right, he'd be on your. And then if you didn't, you just wouldn't make it. You know, it's just he was obsessive about being obsessive with those kind of things, and there's no question. There isn't a day that goes by, and these guys probably feel the same way. There isn't a day that goes by that I do not think of him or something I learned from him, no matter if he got it from somebody else, because he stole ideas from everybody. And then he found a way to make them his own. But man, there's a slow. I mean, there's always something. I just said it the other day, man. You can't fake a harvest. I just said it the other day. Now, he didn't think of it, right? But boy, he embedded into our heads every single day. So yeah, absolutely, no question.
Coach Sundance, how about you?
Yeah, he taught you about appreciation of the game and the history of it, and paying homage to those who came before you. And I think that was one of the greatest things, was that you learned to be a student of the game. But you know, for me personally, it's just so funny. Like Steve's like, oh, Sunday just got told, you know, all the time how much Coach loved him. Like Coach he was not a big mushy gushy guy ever.
Except with you.
Yeah, except with me. And to that point, let me just tell you the story. I get done. I'm playing over in Sweden, and I never made it to the big dance with the boys. You know, we won some conference championships. But we never made the national tournament. And Steve's senior year, where this guy who doesn't shoot threes and only shoots free throws and layups becomes a conference tournament MVP. And shout out to Luke Wicks. He might be the only player in Northern State history to ever make all conference coming off the bench. He might be the only player in NSIC history to be a guy who made all conference coming off the bench. That's the type of dude he was. I mean, you talk about relentless. Like, that cat could come in, and he was the original microwave, Iceman Wicks, hot and cold at the same time because his knees never warmed up. six knee surgeries later. We're walking like his legs are screwed on backwards. But Steve-O goes out and just, you know, on some sort of fantastic dance in the conference tournament and scores makes a bunch of free throws and makes a bunch of layups, guards the other team's best player and wins the conference tournament. And I'm watching this or listening to it online over in Sweden. It's about 3 a.m. in the old Scandinavia. And I pick up my phone. I'm calling pumped up. Like, I'm calling Steve. Steve's on the phone. He's like, oh, man, bro. Like, Steve's being all mushy-gushy. He's like, you're just as much a part of this as anything else. And I'm like, yeah, right, Steve. I'm over here in Sweden. And then all of a sudden, Coach grabs the phone from Steve. And he's like, Sonny, here's the deal. You're never going to be a really good pro, and you're not going to make a lot of money. So you probably should just come over and be a graduate assistant. So just stop with all the professional basketball crap and just come over and be a GA. Here's Steve. And at that point, the party was over for me. I was like, well, thanks, Coach. I really appreciate your level of confidence in my ability to play the game of basketball. And so I always remember that because I came back and I was like, I'm giving up a chance to be, you know, make no money playing professional basketball, but at least I get to see a little bit of the world, to be a GA who, when you work for Coach Meyer, it doesn't matter if you're a GA or assistant, your hours are insane. Your trips to Minneapolis are too much. You just drive there. I mean, Coach Sather can attest to this. You're driving 5 hours there after, you know, your 4:30 a.m., 4:30 staff meeting, 5:30 a.m. practice. You go as a GA to a couple of classes. You hop in your car, drive about noon or 1 o'clock to Minneapolis, go catch a practice or a game, drive back, and you're doing it again the next day. Practice at 5:30 a.m. And that's what we did. And so the phrase that sticks out in my mind is like Luke talked about it, the phrase that sticks out in his, but he always said that you got to meet someone in life who expects greatness from you. And winning is not easy, and greatness is freaking hard. And to be that level of dedicated like Coach Meyer was, I mean, that's why genius is crazy and crazy is genius. He never, and Coach Sather said it, he never wasted a rep in practice. Never wasted a rep. And SchuZ, you could attest to this, like on the back of our shirts down at Arizona Power, it was #every-rep. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where the mentality became from, is you got to be obsessive about every rep. And so for me, Coach Meyer changed my life because I was an international business major that got my degree because I cheated off Steve the entire time. Steve was the real international business major. He went and got his master's in it. And I'm sitting here just, hey, Steve, can you help me with my foreign exchange over here? I don't know it. So I went overseas and didn't use my international business degree. And Steve went down to Nuevo Laredo and tried to join the cartel. So, life has its funny moments, is all I'll say, SchuZ.
Absolutely. And I mean, for you guys all, you guys are obviously coaches. Coach Steve, you're obviously now a head coach this year. What are some of the biggest things that you've taken away from Coach Meyer, but also what's kind of your coaching style? Take us through how you kind of plan to become and be a head coach this year.
Well, it's funny how, these guys said there's not a day that goes by that they don't think about Coach Meyer. When we do our team Zooms, which we don't do a ton of them, but at least one.
Yeah, right.
That's true. That's true. And,
you Zoom more than anybody in history is.
No, I Zoom a lot, but now with the team, a lot of Zooms. I'm like a Zoom pro. But what the first thing we do when we start talking about building is we got the Meyer 3-pointer, and there's 3 things I give from Coach Meyer is the first thing that I give him. So I'm constantly thinking as well just about how much he's impacted me and stealing all this stuff. And I do think for me, like you asked about coaching style, one thing that I'm not Coach Meyer, and the other people I've worked for, Randy Ray, who's, all-time Big Sky winningest coach, Jeff Linder, who's obviously at Wyoming now, who's, one of my mentors and taught me so much over the last 4 years. I'm not Jeff Linder. And so I think one thing in coaching is that you've got to be who you are and be comfortable in your own skin. When I got my first head job, it was right after I was an assistant at Northern for Coach Meyer. So I think I was 26 or 27 years old when myself and Luke, when we went out to Sheridan, we had about 2 weeks to put a team together and get that thing going. But one thing I knew at that point is I couldn't come in as a 26-year-old head coach and try to act like Don Meyer. Like that's just not going to work. I mean, some of my players were 1 or 2 years younger than me. So you kind of just got to be who you are, be comfortable in your own skin. And then also, especially at this level where you can't have a staff, is you've got to know who you aren't also. And you've got to build your staff to make up for your weaknesses or deficiencies. So in terms of coaching style, I mean, I think I'm pretty progressive, pretty positive, but at the same point in time that there's a standard that has to be met. And if you meet that standard, it's all good. If you don't, there's going to be a problem. So, but I know I'm looking forward to getting with our guys. We haven't even been able to yet with the restrictions from COVID. So we're still kind of waiting for that first practice, that first workout.
And for you, Coach Luke, I mean, you're obviously an assistant coach out there. You guys have had a lot of big-time recruits starting to come in as well. How do you kind of plan to how do you kind of recruit, and what's kind of your strategy when you're going through trying to recruit players?
Well, I think that as an assistant, the number one thing is you have to recruit to your head coach. And these guys can all tell you they've all been head coaches. If you bring someone to the table that doesn't fit how they see or how they want to play, it's not going to be a fit from the start. So you don't want to set the kids up for failure. And that's one of the things that I think student athletes can do a great job too of asking some of the difficult questions of how do you see me in your system? And I know some people say that, and coaches probably have a pretty good auto-tune response back to it. It's, oh yeah, we're going to do this, this, and this. It's like, well, show me film of that. Show me who you see me like. Who am I like in your program? Why are you recruiting me? I think obviously just talking a little bit about the Don Meyer stuff too, he was, like I mentioned before, he was pretty set in his ways with a lot of things. And one of the things I learned from the 2 guys I've worked for, Rex Walters and David Stoudemire, being that they're NBA guys, is they have a great ability to adjust. They're going to look at their team from year to year and say, how are we going to put these guys in position to be as most successful as a team and as a player? So I know with Rex one year, we were trying to run the Princeton my first year there, and I was like, this is terrible. I told him, I was like, this is not right. Like, look at our guys. Like, our personnel isn't for this. We got some guys that can get up and down the court. We got some guys that can score in the post. Like, yeah, we have pass, handle, shoot guys, but this doesn't match it. And I remember he came in at halftime of our first conference game down at Santa Clara. We were down 20 points. And he said, screw it. And he drew up. We're going 4 out, 1 in, pass and cut. And we came back and started the second half on like a 25-2 run. And the rest was history after that. So you can't be afraid to change and adapt. That's one of the things. And then, in regards to us out here at Pacific, I know we changed our complete defensive philosophy this past year, and it benefited us greatly. We looked at our defensive personnel. We had some shot blockers. We had a big 7'1" guy. We had guys with great timing. And we changed our ball screen defense, and we didn't spend an entire summer trying to do it. I mean, we put it in piece by piece, and when the time came, we put it in. Our guys picked it up, and a credit to them, we knew who they were and how we needed to teach them. And that's the biggest thing from coaching that I took from Coach Meyer was his methodology. Like, how do I instruct these guys to get them to do what I need them to do? And, something that sticks out is that you can't give instructions that can be understood. You got to give instructions that can't be misunderstood. So when you're coaching someone and you're teaching someone and you're telling them you need them to be at the split line or you need them to be on and up the line, depending upon whatever your philosophy is, if he looks at you with that blank stare, you can't move on. You have to stop and break that down. And I think a lot of coaches, they want everything to move. They want everything to pop. But at the same point, if it moves along and our guys don't understand it, we're not going to be successful on the court. So I think that's the biggest thing from those guys, the ability to adapt. And then, recruitment-wise, Damon looks at the guy and he has a great ability to say, I love that this guy does this. I don't necessarily care that he doesn't do this, but I love that he does this. And we can find a place for him to get on the court because he does this so well. I call it the Rodman rule, essentially. And I know a lot of people will say they got a Rodman rule or whatnot, but we don't care if a guy can't shoot. We don't care if a guy can't dribble. But if he can rebound every single basketball, we're going to be successful because we're not going to give up second shots, and we're going to get second shots because he's a monster on the glass. Same thing defensively. there's a lot of guys that get overlooked because they can't score it offensively in this day and age. But you look at a guy like Jeffrey McClendon, who's from Southern California, played at LMU, was a 2-year starter for him. He was a bear, man. No one wanted, like, if you had the ball in your hand and he was guarding you, you just passed it. You're like, I don't even want to deal with this. So there is roles for those guys out there. And I think Damon's NBA experience shows some of that, like a Tony Allen type. He can see a guy for what he's great at. And that's kind of how we recruit. We're going to go after guys that fit our system and fit what he wants to do. And if it doesn't fit perfectly, we'll make an adjustment because he does something great.
And you, Coach Sather, and we know the COVID effects has come into play now. As a coach trying to not only get your team ready for the season, but also still finishing up 2020 to a degree, getting ready for 2021, how are you getting used to this recruitment year?
Well, the great thing is we're in such a great hotbed up here in Grand Forks. We got great proximity to everything. So we're close to major cities and all that kind of stuff. No, I mean, we were fortunate. This COVID stuff has been difficult because, I mean, obviously you can't have guys on campus. You can't leave campus. And I think for me personally, live, being around people face-to-face, watching people play live, and there's a lot of evaluations going on other than just what kind of player are they. And so that's been really tough. We were fortunate with our transfer class this spring because there was a couple guys that we honed in on a little bit earlier than before the COVID stuff hit. We ended up getting one of those guys, and then we got a grad transfer that we recruited pretty hard to Northern State way back in the day. It ended up being a freshman of the year in his D2 league when he was a freshman. So he had a pretty good D2 career that I think will be really beneficial to us. So he's a guy that we know pretty well. And then we ended up getting one Division I transfer that again, we started that relationship, a little bit before COVID, but none of those guys got to see campus. And so, I don't know. I mean, just trying to be upfront, honest with them on everything, so they have a pretty good idea of what they're getting into. Was the biggest thing we try to do during recruiting. You try to show as much as you can with some virtual Zooms and things like that. But there's no question. I think across the country, the challenge right now of recruiting even a 21 class, there's kids out there making a lot of decisions with never stepping foot on campus and being around their future teammates. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Honestly, I can't sit and pretend that I have any answer or that we're going to hit home runs on stuff, but it's definitely going to be some challenges for all of us. No question.
No doubt. And obviously now, if you're obviously trying to recruit a player to come out there, how do you kind of plan an approach to get a guy to come to Wyoming?
Well, you got to schedule about a couple, 5, 6, 7 months in advance, because if the weather hits, you'll never get out here. COVID has been great for us. I'm not going to lie to you. COVID's been outstanding for the University of Wyoming, simply because we've been practicing social distancing since 1890. So it's been 130 years at Wyoming, people, the least populated state. We are very fond of social distancing. So that's why we're the least infected state. Just a shout out to the state of Wyoming. So what you'll try to get here, Z, when it comes to getting recruits to Wyoming, right now, I always say you find a way or you find an excuse. I think there's a lot of programs out there that with this going on, when it comes to recruiting, they'll say, well, we're just better if we can get kids to campus, or, it's not fair. We're coming to a gunfight with a knife because we don't get to show them what we got on campus. Well, the great ones adjust, as Coach Smiley said so aptly. And what we've done, I think our multimedia department's been phenomenal, Z, in just making sure that people can see us and what we're about through video. And that's how you have to go. You have to have some sort of, virtual presence now. And it's hard to just get a kid on a phone and walk around with a Zoom and call it a virtual tour. Like, you have to have people that put things together so they can see what you have to offer. And what's been really cool is it's just the surrounding community of Wyoming, of Laramie. We are the only 4-year university in the state. And so we occupy all 4 corners of the state of Wyoming. We occupy every single spot when it comes to what people are looking for from us. And so we use all that in recruiting, because at the end of the day, people are going to travel 5, 6, 7 hours to come watch University of Wyoming play when we got it rolling out here, and they're diehard fans. So for us recruiting, when we're talking to players, and we're trying to do this in the COVID period, like Coach Sather's talking about, there is no map for this. This hasn't been done before. And at the end of the day, you got to find a way to make sure that people see what you have to offer, players see what you have to offer, parents see what you have to offer. And there are going to be a lot of players out there that are searching for you on the internet to see what you got going on. And if you don't have that virtual presence, I mean, you may miss out. And I'll say this, just strictly when it comes to recruiting during the COVID-19 era, is that, the kids that have great track records as far as character, academics, they can play basketball at a competent level. They're blowing up right now. There's a lot of kids out there that are getting recruited at levels that are maybe they're 4 and even higher because of the things that we always talk about in the recruiting process. Like, do you have those winning traits? Are you going to be a guy who's taking care of himself? Are you going to find a gym in the middle of COVID instead of finding an excuse? Are you going to have your grades in order? Right? Are you doing the things that you could control versus just being a guy where maybe if you call on a kid and they say, well, I'm not quite sure what he's been doing or what he's up to, or his character's kind of in question, I don't know about his academic profile. Those things are going to check you off right now because we can't miss on all the qualities that a kid has to have to play at this level. And so, yeah, talent is an important thing, but also all the things that come along with that right now in COVID, which are making sure that you're an everyday accountable human being, that you're showing up, doing the work, having great leadership abilities. Those are what we're having to fight and find right now in this recruiting era, is kids that we can't miss on, even though we don't get a chance to maybe evaluate them in person, but we can do a lot of reconnaissance. So as much as the players recruiting the school and looking for their virtual presence, the coaches now are getting creative as well. And they're calling a lot more people than they used to have to call because they're missing that touch time. They're missing that in-person, face-to-face contact that a lot of us are used to. So it's, I don't know if that answered your question, Z, but I'll just tell you, like, this has been an interesting experience for a lot of staffs. And when we got this job, we signed 7 kids in a month virtually. Kids that had no idea what Wyoming was before we got the job here. And so I'll just give it's a shout out to our staff and our media department, our sports information department, being able to put things together that showcase what we are and what we're about. So kids made an informed decision to come here, because at the end of the day, you're going to know what Coach Linder does and how he does it. He's got coaches calling him from all ends of the earth. And, we're able to practice right now. We got coaches coming in watching our practice about what he does and how he does it. But you still have to get players to execute the system. And so that is a big time problem, I think, for a lot of schools right now, because they're looking at COVID as an excuse versus trying to find a way to win right now.
And Coach Smiley, you are coming out into the system. You're going to try building, obviously, a culture for your team, establishing an entire roster now. What is the culture you want to establish, and how do you plan to do that?
I think for us, it's just kind of just moving on from where we were the past 4 years. When we got to Northern Colorado 4 years ago, we had to, really rebuild everything. I mean, the program was in a really bad shape, not only just from wins and losses, but culture, NCAA violations, postseason bans. I mean, you name it, we had it. And so we really took our time, and it was actually a blessing in disguise that we were able to take our time and not shortcut the process and get the kids we want to get. Try to get a lot of, 4-year kids, a lot of high school kids, and just build it up day by day. And I think for us, the goal is to really have nothing change. Again, trying to use your own personality. I'm not Jeff Linder. I'm a different type of personality. But what we built and how we built it, for that to be the exact same type of process, and just keep trying to build it year after year. And so culture-wise, we feel like we're in a good place. We have a lot of returns. We have 9 returning guys on our team, and guys that know what winning is and what winning isn't. And so just trying to take that a day at a time. The toughest thing with COVID is just that right now our guys aren't even here. And so, like a lot of programs in the country that don't have their guys on campus, like Coach Wicks just said, they're one of the programs that can practice right now. So everyone's not on the same type of situation, which is fine. But I think for us, I would really be panicky if we had a brand new team or a really young team. But for us, we've got so many returners and now guys that finally are upperclassmen that we're looking forward to them getting back. But from a culture standpoint, I think we'll be just fine.
And Coach Luke, I mean, you talk about you guys are not able to get back in the gym yet. And I think a lot of the bigger city places might not be getting into the gyms for the next couple of months possibly. How do you guys kind of plan to be able to get jump started and get into the season when that time does come, with maybe not as much practice time as other programs have had?
I think when you've been in it long enough, this is kind of going to go back to the way it used to kind of be, where it was 2 weeks and finally everyone got on court. It was 2 weeks and you had an exhibition game. And at the end of week 3, you started your games. So we've kind of taken the approach of an NBA lockout in that sense, where we're just telling our guys, you got to stay ready, man. You stay ready. You don't have to get ready. And a lot of our guys being back home have had access to some gyms and have been able to do a lot of different things and stay in shape for it. But the biggest thing for us is similar to Coach Smiley. We do have 9 guys returning. We brought in, we won't have a freshman on our team. Everyone that'll be on our team has had college basketball experience, some form or fashion, whether it's junior college basketball or Division I collegiate experience. And that ranges from the Big 12 to the W.C.T. So we really like what we have coming in. We think that the guys that we sign, obviously Jordan Bell will be a graduate transfer for us. Debate Green's coming in from Nebraska. Nigel Shad's coming in from Kansas State. Mario Madding was at Rhode Island and spent this past year at Dakota Junior College. And Jalen Brown's coming in from Eastern Arizona. All those guys understand what we're about. And in the recruiting process, we develop relationships with them early on. And Nigel and Gervais, I had recruited out of high school and in junior college. So I had a previous relationship with them once they entered the portal. And then, our staff did a great job of cultivating relationships. And that's one of the things I think that some of us didn't hit on in the COVID-19 era of recruiting is you rely a lot more on the relationships you previously built, whether that's with student athletes in the transfer portal or coaches or mentors around that you rely on for information, because they still have access to these kids and they still see them most of the time day to day. But for us, really like what we got coming back. We lost a big piece in Jaleel Tripp, who was the WCC Defensive Player of the Year. Actually, our second Defensive Player of the Year in the last 3 years here at Pacific. And he's going to be a big piece. But at the end of the day, for any team and any program to take the next step, people have to fill in and people have to fill that void. And we're not going to find another Jaleel Tripp, but hopefully the guys that are coming back will make strides and progress the way we want them to. Even it's going to be a great, case study to see, does the summer access truly matter in a sense of will guys get better on their own? Because I think there is a stigmatism out there that kids don't want to get in the gym or kids need this and this and this today. No, it's like our guys have been in the gym. I think our guys want to work. They want to be in the gym. Kids want to play basketball. So we feel really good about the spot we're at and where our program is at.
And Coach Sather, when you're building a roster and you want to try competing to win your conference, try to obviously make the tournament run, what things are looking for in a roster? What do you need to be successful?
Well, boy, it's a good question, Zach. For us, listen, we took a team that was, I think, preseason 8th in the league this year, my first year here. We had a tremendously talented point guard in Marlon Stewart. Ended up leading our league in points and assists. And a very, very good player that we're going to lose. And we also lost our starting 4-man in Keenan Walter. We lost the 2-guard in Billy Brown. So 3 seniors that we lose. We bring 7 guys back and then 3 transfers that have experience. Luke talked about that experience of playing college basketball. I think that is important. And we've got one that, we've got 3 of them. One that was a JUCO, one that was a Division I transfer, then one that was a Division II transfer. So we're going to count on them. For us, it's all about being able to really be able to put pressure in the lane, put pressure in the paint. Can we score? Can we get there? Can we score from there? And then can we get some shooters around offensively that can play off from that kind of an attack where we're trying to really get it to the lane. And so that's the offensive side of it for us. And Philip Abracha was about 14 plus points a game and led our league in field goal percentage as a sophomore post. We've got him back. So I think that's an area that we're going to be good at again. We've got some depth there this year, I think, even more so than what we had last year. So I think that's gonna really work well for us. But the shooting's huge, and when you got some guys that can score inside, you better have some shooting to just give some floor balance, and that's an area that our guys better be putting some work in, because again we've got some new bodies. They are transfers. We got some guys that need to build off the experience they had last year. But, you know, at the end of the day, defensively, you got to be able to get stops. You got to be able to make teams take tough twos. We're a big believer in making them take tough twos, trying to take away threes and make them have to finish over you in tough twos. There's just so many areas. But you know, obviously having an experienced group is always nice. I mean, we've had our guys on campus now. A lot of them have been here since June 6th. So that was volunteer time, and they had some great work. We had a little bit of a pause in there, and we've been back at it since last week working out. So we're really spending a lot of time right now on just skill stuff, getting these guys back in the gym, playing in the stance, playing with some, you know, working out with some pace, and then trying to get some shooting, a lot of shooting going, just to get their legs underneath them and just see what kind of shooters we have and what we need to be working on to you know, try to help them out. But listen, there's a lot of different areas. You know, I think there's always a little bit of a balance on what kind of defensive team you are, what kind of offensive team you are, and how well do you rebound. And then for us, it's taking care of the basketball. If you can do those things pretty well, you're going to give yourself a chance. We got all the way to a championship game this year as a 6th seed, and I think a lot of the things we were doing well late is we were taking away open threes. We were making teams take tough twos. We did a really good job rebounding this year. I didn't know if that'd be something we'd be as good at, but our guys really did a pretty good job with our rebounding, not giving up a lot of second chance points. And then ultimately for us this year, when we took care of the basketball, it really made a difference for us. We're not a team that forces a lot of turnovers, so we just can't afford to give up turnovers. So I think as we do those things, it gives us a chance to get to a championship game like we did this year. But easier said than done, man. It's a lot of things. It's a lot of things to cover. You know, that's a tough loaded question that you just a lot
Zach,
of things.
Zach,
There's
what I think Coach Sather just did was give you the cycle of the game. And
pretty much.
Zach,
I didn't talk about transition defense.
No, but the cycle of the game was pretty dang good. Pretty close there, Coach.
The whole point is, like, I guess, what would you value? What would you value the most? Gosh, that's a hard one, man. That's a hard one.
Absolutely. And Sundance, I mean, you have now had guys back in there. You've been able to see guys. Have you personally kind of got a feeling that, or at least hearing from other coaches, that some guys are starting to pass up other guys, or the rotation might be shifting to just some guys working harder than others during the quarantine break?
I mean, unless you're a real special player where you're so intrinsically motivated that you have that mama mentality, so to speak, that you can get in the gym and really get work done by yourself. Yes. Is it an advantage? Absolutely. It's different when you got a coach out there under the whistle, playing with pressure. You know, and Coach talked about just working out with pace. I mean, that's the biggest adjustment that we've seen with our guys. I mean, from day one, we were in week 3 now. And geez, from week 1 to week 3, you have to start slow. You have to have baby steps. What about Bob? Great movie reference. You have to have baby steps because you just can't come back into a gym after guys have been off because you have no idea what everybody's been doing. And it's a scary thing. And right now, I mean, just so we're clear on this, like we still, you can't go 5-on-5. We can't go 1-on-1. There's still things that you can't do in a basketball setting that you need to be able to do to try to probably correlate that to success. So when you're talking about 5-on-0 and a lot of 1VO, 3VO, just type drills, you're still handcuffed during this time. And so what I've seen in the last 3 weeks is a massive increase in conditioning. And I think that's where if you can't get on the floor, you really better maximize your opportunities in the weight room and making sure that your guys stay in shape physically and then can get some sort of level of cardio in them. Because at the end of the day, that's one of the most things that you have to be able to run all day if you want to play at a high level. So that's probably the advantage is getting in the gym and being able to have that cardio and getting those game speed reps now in week 3. You can just see our guys' pace is picking up a little bit. And so that's, to me, we're pretty fortunate. Now that doesn't come without any sort of cost here. I mean, our guys have had to quarantine for 14 days before they were even cleared to be able to get on the floor. They got tested 5 days in. You know, Dr. Boyer out here and our athletic staff has done a really good job of just monitoring what our guys are doing. And we're basically in a bubble right now. That's what our guys are doing. They're in a bubble. They're in the double A. They get to stay in the Dome of Doom. They get to go like 4 guys maybe in a locker room at a time, stay 6 feet apart and stay in the damn bubble. So it's weird. It's all weird. We're living in the twilight zone right now, Zach.
Mm-hmm. And Coach Smiley, I mean, we don't know when you guys can start even practicing 1-on-1, 5-on-5. We don't know when games or if games will be played. How do you as a coach plan for this? I mean, how are you kind of planning for this upcoming season, having everything up in the air?
Just do Zooms. It's like we tell our guys, all you can do is control what you can control. I mean, you can't worry about anything else. And so right now, I mean, we're just trying to do the best job we can with the next step of our guys getting back to campus for fall classes, which is rapidly approaching in I think 3 weeks from now. So all you can do is just kind of control that stuff as best you can. If they can get the gym back home, that's great. We try to really talk to our guys about, being honest about it. What are you allowed to do? What are you doing? And if that means you can't even go to the park because, they took the hoops down to the park, that's not your fault, but just tell us the truth so that when we do get back to getting on the court, like Coach Wicks is saying, that we don't hurt you, that we take this thing slow and we do baby steps. Depending on, how things go with when the season starts and stuff, who knows? It might be on schedule. It might not. No one really knows right now. But all we can do, and I think 2 or 3 months ago, I know for me being kind of a type A personality and trying to control everything, you eventually get to the point of saying, hey, with COVID as an example, you might do everything right, and then someone might get a positive somewhere else, and the whole thing's shut down anyways. And so all you can really do is just, control every day, try to win every day, not get too low. I think a lot of people right now just get so depressed, and that's why it's just good just to, even be able to connect with your friends and your colleagues on a coaching and personal level too. But we're just trying to keep our guys positive. I mean, it's been a roller coaster, up, down, just all over the place for the last. I mean, now we're almost into 5 months of this deal, but just trying to say, listen, this is how we can continue to build. We can still do some stuff with film, which is good. I mean, there's only so much you can do when there's not fresh film, but trying to keep our guys going with film and just different things like that. But just at some point in time, like we tell our guys, at some point the season will be here. And not to keep going back to these Coach Meyer quotes, which again, they're probably not all his, but there's, he is the one that burned him into our memory, like Coach Sather said. But there comes a time when winter asks what you've done all summer, and really to tie this thing together, a lot of these players all across the country at all levels are back home right now. And they have to make that decision on what they're doing and how hard they're working, because at some point in time, we all do believe there's going to be a season. And like I tell our guys, like, we've got a pretty deep roster right now. And so we can't play all you guys. If you did the minutes test, you told all the guys, hey, write down a piece of paper, how many minutes do you think you'll play? They all put down 35 minutes. You end up with like 512 minutes. Well, there's only 200 minutes in the game. And so you try to just keep them motivated that way a little bit, mentally kind of messing with their minds that, hey, I mean, at some point in time, we're going to be back. We're going to practice. We're going to play games, and we can't play all of you. So it's on you right now to do the best you can. That's about all we can do.
And Coach Luke, I mean, when you talk about possibly making these rosters work, I mean, we know there is a potential chance that there may not be games this year, or it might be the spring or whatever. And we see the whole issue now with the spring sports from this past year, baseball and stuff like that. If something came like that and there wasn't a season and you had to figure out a way to maneuver the scholarship issue, how do you think that would work? How do you work that out?
It's a great question. And it's someone get paid a heck of a lot more than me should probably be the one figuring that one out. But, I think that if there is something like that, teams will have to make a decision, much just like, some of these other teams had to do. Are they going to keep their seniors on, or are their seniors going to move on? If they've graduated, do they want to move on to different places? Do they want to start a professional career if that's what they want to do? Do they want to move on to their main career for whatever it is? Maybe they have a great job industry or job offer. A lot of different things to play out, a lot of unknowns right now, and that's in every aspect of life. I think, though, the one thing that a lot of people forget about is, these athletes are trying, they're still 18 to 22, 23 years old. They're trying to adjust to this new normal type thing. And the mental health aspect, it has to be talked about with a lot of these guys. And their performance off the court. If all these schools are going to distance learning, how do they learn? How do they adapt? A lot of guys aren't great at just watching a computer screen and seeing a guy talk for 2 hours on a lecture. How are they going to get tutoring? How are they going to do all these different things? So there's so many variables that are going to put probably more stress on our student athletes that as coaches and mentors, we have to be more cognizant about and really have open dialogue with each other and with them about, how they're feeling and how we can help them and how we can move forward, knowing that we have to keep this social distancing and there's not going to be as many resources available.
Absolutely. And Coach Sather, I mean, you look at the importance of probably having a leader in the locker room right now is a huge thing. How much do you value a guy that's in your locker room that could possibly be the guy that unites the guys, keep them in touch, keep all that? What's the importance of just having that leader in your locker room?
I mean, it's everything. It's everything. You've got to be able to trust what's going on in that locker room and the voice that's being heard or the voices that are being heard. So, I mean, listen, I think any successful team is that leadership is going to be really, really key. And so what you're communicating with them as a head coach, and Coach Smiley hit on it, you got to be able to control what you can control. So, I mean, you've got to, as a head coach, you got to make sure that you're a great example of the message you're sending every day, of what they're hearing from day to day, week to week. And throughout this period of time that we're in, and I think they've also got to feel like it's all right for them to come to you and visit with you on stuff. And the open communication is going to be really, really important. But, the locker room's interesting because our guys can't use a locker room. But you're right on. I mean, what's being said in there is so valuable. And you got to make sure that and really as a coach, a lot of times the only control you have what's being said in there is the leadership that you've kind of established with the people you've brought in and your recruits and just the way you've kind of gone about your business. Hopefully they've got some belief and buy-in on what it is you're trying to do and what your staff's trying to do and what your team's trying to do. And because, I mean, a great sign of a really good leader and a really good team is that when things aren't always going your way, you're still looking for solutions. You're not looking for excuses. And so you hope that's what it's going to be, Zach. But you don't always know until you really go through it. And I think for us, with a lot of new guys, and there's a lot of searching that we're still doing. There's still a lot of figuring out for us. And I really like the group. But man, this stuff we're going through, and as it prolongs, if it goes on, as you talked about, the way it could, boy, that communication, there's a lot of things. Even Coach Wicks, you got me stressed out, Luke, on some of these things, if it's online and just the tutoring and the different things that they lose access to, because those things are so important to them. And how do you go about getting what they need? And so I'm telling you, it's having a great line of communication, doing the best you can to solve problems, and let's find a way to make the most out of whatever situation we end up being in.
I have one more question for everyone, but Coach Sundance, last basketball one for you is, there is a big rumor about the transfer rule is going to come into effect some point soon. When you look at that, what's your thoughts on that rule? And, I mean, how is that going to kind of work out for you guys in the program?
Well, with anything, a strength overused becomes a weakness, right? And the tricky thing about all this, Z, and that's a really good question, is that the floodgates are going to open it up, and it's going to be how are programs going to be enticed by it? Are they going to wait for the transfer portal to open up, and then is everything going to become, a revolving door? Because at the end of the day, man, here's the deal. People can argue both ways. Coaches move and take better jobs. Players can leave and take better opportunities for themselves. I think at any point in our life, our whole goal is to better ourselves, but also to stay grounded in what we really believe in, what we're trying to do. And so you're gonna really it's gonna really challenge coaches to recruit, like Coach Wick said. I mean, Coach Smiley, recruit to the guys that fit you and your style of play and believe in what you are doing and really entrenching yourselves into relationships. And then it can't be transactional. Now, it can for some programs. It can be very transactional. It can be basically a results rule organization, and we're going to try to get the best players in here that provide us with the best chance to have success. You can do that a lot of different ways. You can do that by building something that lasts, a program that wins forever, that has certain history and traditions and standards that are culturally set by your locker room and leadership expectations. Or you could go out there and you could go recruit and try to get the best players you possibly can and some coaches are really good at meshing that talent, all right, in that transactional period and getting a bunch of guys to play together for a common purpose. So there's going to be positives both sides. There's also going to be, I believe, just quite speaking honestly, there's going to be poaching. I mean, there's going to be coaches that at a higher level are recruiting players in the handshake line, and that's going to trickle down. And it's going to have an effect on every single level. And so, you're going to take away a lot of what makes college basketball special for a lot of programs, especially like University of Wyoming, is history, tradition, and being and watching players grow up through your program for multiple years. So we know the type of kids that we have to get here are those kids that want to be here. And Wyoming's different, man. If you don't like cold weather, you're not going to come to Wyoming. All right. If you don't like long winters, you're not going to come to Wyoming. It's just, that's what it is. But if you love people that really appreciate tradition and history and basically, like we say, ride for the brand, I mean, that's the type of kids you got to recruit. And you're going to have to not miss on that. That doesn't mean that you won't have transfers, because on average, 2 kids leave a year per program. That's just a national average. So kids are going to leave programs, but it's all for different reasons. But now when you open up the floodgates, you better make sure that you recruit the kids that want to be where you're at and they want to be with you and they want to stay in that program. It's not going to be all sunshine and gumballs, as all Coach Sather used to say. Yeah, not everything is all. This isn't rainbow land here. Nothing's going to be pretty in college basketball. It's going to be tough no matter where you freaking go. And so the message to the players out there is it's going to be hard no matter where you transfer to. And if you're playing and having success at a level and you decide you don't want to go somewhere else, just know it. You're going to have to learn a whole new system, and it's going to be tough no matter where you go. And that's the beauty of this, is that players telling themselves, just like coaches telling themselves, and the players know if coaches don't. So we all have to be great at what we do, and you just got to continue to get better at your craft. And as old Coach Smiley said, control what you can control. But it's gonna be unique to see what happens here, because there already is, I call it a portal pandemic. We're in a pandemic right now, but there's also a portal pandemic going on out there for basketball and all sports. So once the portal pandemic really hits, we're gonna have a lot of fun with college basketball.
Absolutely. My final thing I was wrapping up with everyone I interview is talking about your guys' legacy. I mean, we start off with you, Coach Smiley, obviously. By the time you're done coaching down the line, what do you want your legacy to be?
It's a pretty deep question, Zach.
Whoa, Z. Whoa.
Oh, man.
You know what I hope, man? I hope down the line, when it's all said and done, that I've coached a bunch of players that are on a Zoom like this, and the year 2050, all telling stories and making fun of me, and that would probably be a great impact, where you have a bunch of people that you were able to coach, and they still looked at you in a great light 20, 30 years later down the line, when you're all said and done in the career. So at that point, it might not be Zooms. I mean, who knows? It might be holograms. We don't really know. But, I mean, that's probably the goal for me, is that my players that I was fortunate to coach, and the coaches that I worked with, that way, way, way down the line, once I'm all done, which hopefully is not for a long time, but that they can do something like this.
So how about you, Coach Luke?
Yeah, I think along those similar lines, it's the real joy in coaching and teaching and mentoring is, if you're in a place long enough, you can establish relationships with generations of players, or the people that have come before you and the people that will come after you, and the true deep, meaningful relationships, not just the ones that because you won some championships you're still friends with them, the ones that down the line they're sending you wedding invites, they're talking to you about their firstborn child, they're FaceTiming you when they get their first professional contract, when life happens to them, not only good but also some of the hardships in life that you're naturally going to occur. They still reach out to you because you've made such an impact in their life, that they want you to be a part of that still. I think that's where the reward and the joy in this comes for me is, we're all competitors. We all like winning. We all hate losing. But at the same point, if you don't have deep, meaningful relationships with your players and the people that are around you, why do it? Why do it? Because, you know, I couldn't tell you how many wins Coach Meyer had, but I know he had a lot. But I can also tell you there's a lot more people that have no idea that, you know, he was an all-time great college basketball coach, but know that he was an all-time just great guy and great human. So that's where, for me as a legacy, I want that to continue on. So when these players do have things happen to them, they know that I'm a phone call away or a hologram call away, I guess, in the future. As Coach Smiley, it's about relationship building. It's about the love for one another. That's what this is all about for me.
Absolutely. How about you, Coach Sather?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much be beating on the same drum. You know, it was fun. It was fun. There's a group of guys that coach at Black Hill State that we did a Zoom call with, and I think that was a lot of fun because you start hearing stories about how they kind of perceive things and how they kind of remember things, and I might remember them a little bit differently than they do, but it's just kind of fun to hear their experience and through their eyes a little bit as far as what it meant to them. And you know, we even did it with some old Wolves when I was an assistant with you guys. We just did that, you know, a while back, and it was just fun to hear some of those old stories. And I always like hearing Coach Smiley's because it's always a little different than maybe what actually happened, Steve. You know, I don't know, maybe just a little bit. You there still, Steve?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I'm just giving crap, but it's just fun. The relationship part of it is so much fun, and it's not always easy during, but afterwards, just hopefully maybe you made an impact, and I just like to think that if you kind of make it through 4 years, 5 years of being in our program, I just think hopefully, and I'm sure these guys are the same way. I know they are. I just think it's going to set you up for life and to handle the ups and downs. And I think when you do it the right way, boy, those relationships last for a long, long time. But you got to keep working at them. That's the thing. I think some of us, I know I could do a lot better job over the course of time keeping in contact with guys. But that's what, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
No doubt. Last but not least, Coach Sundance, what do you want your legacy to be?
Just put those guys on repeat and play. I mean, it's kind of, we're all cut kind of from the same cloth, right? And if you see this, if you kind of come up and you look at a coaching tree and how it was designed and where the roots are. I mean, the roots are in the potential impact, you know, and you can never underestimate. And Sherry Cole sent me a letter a long time ago. I think it was 2004 as a GA at Northern. I just got done working a camp for her down in Oklahoma, and she wrote one phrase. She said, "Never underestimate your potential impact, because your impact as a coach will be felt years down the line. And very rarely is it felt immediately." And it's like when we talk about Coach Meyer and how he'll give you an impactful call, you know, 6, 7, 8 years, 10 years after you're done playing. What you remember is how hard it was. And you know, because it was hard, it was worth it, because life is not easy. And I've just kind of lived by this phrase is, if you want to be a bridge to people's success, be prepared to be walked on. And that's the servant leadership mentality for anybody that you're around. If you do this, you better be doing it for the right reasons, because you won't be in here very long if you're not for the right reasons. And kids can spot a phony a mile away. And one thing that I really love about everybody that's on this call and all the the people that have been in the Coach Meyer and the Northern State family is that they do it for the right reasons. No matter what they do, no matter what profession they're in, you better believe that their heart and soul is into it. And that ripple effect for us is we're just trying to pass it down years down the line, where we could sit around a campfire, we could sit around, a living room like Coach Sather talked about, and hear all the crazy war stories that we went through, so to say. Because nobody sits around there, Z, and tells the easy ones. They tell the tough times. They talk about they couldn't talk about while they're there in the locker room. When they go back to that locker room, they're talking about that stuff. Now they get a chance to say it to your face, or they get a chance, and then you can laugh about it with some humility, and just have a little bit of humor in this serious profession that we always take way too seriously all the time. We're coaching basketball. We're not curing cancer, but what we are doing is we're helping mentor young men into a stage after basketball that they better be prepared for, because life comes at you fast. So I love these guys, man. I love that you did this. I just love being on here with these guys, because it makes me feel like I'm I'm back at home at Northern with these guys and hearing Coach Sather getting us ready for Vanderbilt. Oh boy.
Well, I definitely appreciate all you guys for taking time to come today, and look forward to seeing what I got next for you guys.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
Hey, Z. Thanks, Zach.
Of course. Talk to you guys later. God bless.